On today's podcast, we dive into the mind of music visionary Nick Holmsten, the powerhouse behind some of Spotify's most innovative features. From redefining how we discover music to enabling artists like never before, Nick shares insider knowledge of a world of transition, from the old copy model to the modern streaming landscape. We'll explore the transformation of fans into superfans and deep dive into the intricacies of technological shifts and the rise of a superpower called AI. Whether you're an artist or an industry aficionado, you won't want to miss Nick's insights into the future of music and how you can harness these trends. Insiders, are you ready?
Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. Today, we have a truly exciting conversation with Nick Holmsten, a dynamic force in the music industry who has led the charge in shaping how we experience music in this digital age. From his pioneering work at Spotify to the groundbreaking insights in his book, Fan-Powered Future, Nick takes us on a journey through the shifting tides of music consumption and the emergence of the attention economy. We dive deep into personal storytelling and vulnerability and connecting with fans, and how AI and machine learning are revolutionizing the industry. With Nick's unique perspective on the role of fans as today's A&R and his vision for the future of fan-artist interaction, this is an episode filled with critical insights for anyone navigating the music business landscape. If you're an artist looking for strategies to thrive in this digital age, or curious about how technology shapes artistic success, you won't want to miss this. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Insiders! Are you an aspiring musician, artist, band, or future music business professional looking to take your career to the next level? Well, look no further. At MUBUTV, we offer personalized career counseling and coaching designed specifically for folks like you.
Imagine having both of us by your side, guiding you through every step of your music journey. Our sessions are tailored to meet your unique needs, focusing on critical aspects of your music career, such as refining your songs, defining your artist story, identifying your target audience, and enhancing your social media presence, just to name a few.
Whether you're just starting out or looking to elevate your existing career, we've got you covered. Our comprehensive approach ensures you get insights on everything from live shows to branding and marketing strategies. We understand that every artist is unique. That's why our coaching is personalized just for you.
And here's the best part. We offer flexible coaching packages that fit any budget. Choose from individual sessions ranging from 30 to 90 minutes, or save with our discounted 4-session packages. Experience custom sessions designed to enhance your music career, with opportunities for greater savings when you choose bundled sessions. Investing in your musical journey has never been more accessible.
Imagine the clarity and direction you'll gain after just one session. The feedback on your songs, the strategies to grow your audience, and the confidence to perform live, all tailored just for you.
So why wait? Don't let uncertainty hold you back. Join us for your free 15-minute discovery call at book.mubutv.com for a transformative coaching experience that will elevate your music career. That's book.mubutv.com.
Hi, this is Jessica Entner of Warner Chappell Music, and you're listening to the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured guest is Nick Holmsten, a music visionary with a long, extensive career in the music industry. He was one of the people who started working at Spotify and who wrote an incredible book called Fan-Powered Future. This was a fascinating and insightful conversation, Eric, for a couple reasons. Nick is somebody who's been on the forefront of seeing what we always talk about, that transition, right? The revolution, as I call it. A revolution I define as, a radical upheaval of the established order,
right?
Which was, the copy model, selling things,
right,
and
an access model.
To an access model. And two outcomes of every revolution are a change of habits, but on a more profound level, which is really what his book is about, is a change of values. That's what I found about that was so fascinating about his book, is that this is a man who really understands that today it's all about building your fan bases, having an understanding of who your audience is, and the power of storytelling. You hear me talking about this all the time. We talk about this on the show a lot, that one of the things that's so important is the music is free. Whether it's your band or Beyonce, it's free.
Correct.
Okay? We don't pay for it anymore like we used to in the old model. So the power of storytelling is, who are you? What are you about? Where are you coming from? What do you stand for? What don't you stand for? This is the future of how you build fans. You know, you and I have talked about that extensively. We talked about that with your single that you've put out on mental health and how you will attract people with those similar values who care about that. That's what it's all about. And the fascinating and revolutionary part of this, Eric, is that the fandom is not just built on the song or the album, but it's built on who you are.
The personality.
Yeah, not only the personality, but the values and the story you're telling about who you are behind it. That was one of the most interesting aspects of the whole shift that I thought in our conversation.
It's interesting that you would start off with that point because mine is kind of segueing into the same thing. You talk about the power of storytelling, and my thing that I really loved in this conversation was about building fan bases and what he talked about that. And he said, he stresses the importance of building a dedicated fan base from the ground up, starting with finding the first 100 fans and growing from there. And all of that is due to what you're saying, that first step, that power of storytelling, the idea of that hero's journey. What have you been through? What are people going to connect with that are going to latch on besides the music? The music is the obvious thing. If the music is not connecting, you're not going to have much of a fan base. You need to make sure that music is incredible that you're creating. That's number one. That's just the baseline. But the second part of that is building that fan base. And it all goes back to what you were saying with the power of storytelling, is building that story. And you, as the artist that's out there listening to this, taking the time to build out what that story is, really thinking about it, who you are, like Rich said, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What causes are you behind? All of these kind of things that paints that picture. And then the second part of that journey is finding out who your avatar is. What do you most sound like? What are the top 10 artists that you most start looking at what they're doing? Look at how they're building their social media. Look at how they're speaking to their audience. And of course, not stealing directly from them, but taking things, bits and pieces of what you like from certain artists, what you don't like, and then molding that into your own thing. I think that's crucially important. And we talk about this in this episode.
And I think just to add to what you're saying, one of the things that doing what you just suggested will do, it will give you an understanding. And as simple as this may sound, you wouldn't believe how many people artists don't really get this. It will give you an idea of who your audience is.
Yeah.
Are they men? Are they women? Are they older? Are they younger? Are they educated? Are they not? Are they, married? Are they single? Are they rural people? Are they city dwellers?
Right.
Where are they living?
Yes.
I mean, this stuff is
that's
all
the demographics part and the psychographics.
And it's important. We can get all that today.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you talk to artists like, who is your audience? I don't know. Well, whenever an artist says that to me, I always say, well, you should start to learn who your audience is. Doesn't mean it's going to be your only audience, but it's a great place to start.
And with that, insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with Nick Holmsten.
Nick, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Your professional journey has been incredibly multifaceted. From being an artist to leading innovations at Spotify that redefined how music is discovered and consumed. So, given that, how would you define this era that we're currently in?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I said, a long time ago, and this is probably like 10 years ago, that if you think the music industry has changed a lot in the last 5 years, this is nothing about what's going to happen in the next 5. And I would even say that today. I think we're just in the start of a dramatic change in so many different ways. And the reason for that is that we had a transition from retail into streaming and engagement. And when everything has come into these big systems, the biggest challenge right now is really about the amount of music that's being released and how to manage to cut through that noise and get some attention. That's going to be, I think, a new challenge and a really interesting way to see how that's going to be sorted out.
Yeah, it's, as I'm listening to you, I'm realizing that's not only a problem for music, it's exacerbated in music. It's a problem for a lot of areas of media. It's a problem for movies. It's a problem for books. It's certainly a problem for television. There's so many other areas besides music. I think it's greatest in music because of its volume. But yeah, you're identifying something that is a bigger, more profound problem than just in music. It's a media problem worldwide.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we are in this attention economy. As an artist, you're not just competing with other artists. You're competing about anything today, anything that takes time. I think people kind of have two different kind of things they're doing, and I usually refer them into like there's a world of like utility apps and stuff like that that gives you basically time back, that helps you. It could be everything from banking to other solutions that you use to bake things. But then I think when you come into the entertainment piece, is like you're up against everything, and we also know that the attention span, especially for youngers today, is so short. So you have to in some way find a way to attract these in a very short period of time. And as you said, it goes for anything, and everything, I would say, like when it comes to most of the pop culture and entertainment today.
Nick, welcome to the show. This is Eric. So glad to have you on the show. I wanted to ask you, in your experience, how has the shift from the copy model, selling individual albums or tracks, to the access model, which is now streaming and subscription services, impacted the way that artists connect with their fans over the past decade?
Yeah, I think it went through phases. So I think we're kind of back to where it all started. I think fans are extremely important today. I think they are the ones who actually are your marketeers and the ones you need to focus on. I think there was a time, and I remember this specifically, especially after I joined Spotify and innovate on playlists and new systems, like to launch music. It felt like the industry was in some kind of strategy where everything came down to like, just get on these playlists. That will solve everything. And then I think it gets crowded and it's too much things, and it's too much. Today it's a different systems. It's more machine learning, AI, personalization and stuff like that. So you cannot really rely on the streaming services to help you with that in the way it might have been in the beginning. So I think that everybody in the music industry need to rethink the strategies. And I think we're kind of back to, you have to build a fan base and you have to start somewhere. If that is finding your first 100 fans, that's what you do. And if you can find 1,000 fans or 10,000 fans, that's how you build. And I think the streaming services is way, way more kind of a mirroring of what you're doing. And just to be fair, the services like Spotify is really tracking a lot of external data. Everybody keep asking me like, what is the strategy right now? And I always say like, if you're a new artist, emerging artist into the market, prove yourself. Your job is basically get the first 1,000 fans, but everybody will find out if you move the needle. And eventually these streaming services will be really good at amplifying your music once they start to see that it's getting traction.
Yeah, it's so interesting listening to you because, the answer you just gave is a fascinating one when we think of the historic aspect of signing artists to labels and putting their music out. When I think of that, and I've been in the music business for 47 years, I think of the fact that, you had to be chosen to get a record deal. A record label put your music out. And even in that old model where we had far, far, far less, only 10 to 15% of that model actually succeeded and connected in getting attention or was a hit or made its money back in the physical world. And one of the things that you're speaking about, which I want to sort of further and go a little deeper with you on, is that in your work, Nick, you've highlighted the power of personal storytelling and vulnerability in forging deeper connections with fans. Can you talk about the importance of this for artists who are building fan bases? Because I think it's a very relevant issue to what we're speaking about.
Absolutely. I mean, I've also been in the music industry for quite a long period of time. And I've also experienced the fact that in the old industry, how could we think about it? It was a really small industry. What I mean with that is very few people made a lot of made a decision actually what end up in the record stores, And another thing to think about as well is that we keep forgetting about the fact that maybe 25% of the people that listen to music actually went into record stores. And most of the people that listen to music maybe got it from radio, TV, or maybe they went into like a department store at Christmas and bought records. And what happens when streaming entered, it kind of combined, radio with retail. And suddenly, the hypothesis from the beginning was that you're going to get a lot of new users eventually after the real music buffs has entered and created a playlist and find and search and stuff like that looking for some kind of curated experience. The second phase of that will be like, I think the industry as it is right now is better than ever. And what I mean with that is that I think it's a meritocracy, but it's a marathon. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to be there. But the beauty about it, and you know this as well, like there was always like a copy paste version in the music industry. Like today we're looking for a young, girl, like that's going to do this. Now it's a boy band. Now it's a rock, whatever it is. It was like a templatized version of it. I don't think we will have, like the Billie Eilish and the Ed Sheerans, if it wasn't for streaming, if it wasn't about like, it's actually the fans that make the decision, not the record labels and the A&R. So I think that shift have totally changed. I would say like the fans are today's A&Rs. Like it's definitely not the record labels that make this decision anymore.
Yeah, it's not a push economy in music, it's a pull economy. That's a very, very true statement, and it's one that was a radical shift from the old model to the new model. And I think one of the things that created that was streaming. We don't pay for it anymore. We pay for it not with cash, but with our attention. And whether it's Beyonce or the new kid who's your neighbor, it doesn't matter. It's all free. No. So our criteria is going to be radically different. I mean, it's always been said that, any kind of revolution produces two outcomes: a change of habits, which is we don't listen to radio, we listen to, streaming. But the other one is more profound, which is there's a change of values. And that's what you were just talking about, which I think is so important to highlight.
Absolutely. The amount of music that comes up today is crazy. But I think I would say this, like we talk about this enormous amount of uploaded music on the streaming platforms today. I think we just need to realize that it's not really 100,000 new emerging artists that uploads music every day. There's everything from different kind of noise and moods and sounds. And there's also a lot of public domain, like that people re-upload and hoping to in some way catch the attention, So I think it will be interesting to really find out what the real number is on, if you look at it from the old world, like how many new songs that actually goes into competition. The number is still staggering, but it's not 100,000, new emerging artists or artists in general that upload music every day on Spotify. I don't have, like the exact number, but I'm 100% sure that you can probably erase the massive amount of these uploads as music that's never, ever going to touch the user.
Nick, I want to get into your book now, Fan Powered Future. And in your book, you explore the shift from passive consumers to active, engaged superfans. What are some of the key strategies or examples you can recommend for new and emerging artists to tap into?
Yeah, I mean, I have spent a lot of time thinking about this. This is from even before Spotify. And what I came to the conclusion is that there's a lot of shift that happens. On one side, you have for the artist is the way you produce music and the fact that its technology is available in different ways and it doesn't cost a fortune to do it. So you have the ability to actually to produce it. The second thing is that the platforms, gives the ability to anyone to really get the music uploaded. At the same time, the marketing piece of it is the most interesting aspect because we all know that in the old industry, record labels usually spend about 20% on marketing. And when they did a deal and transition happened from retail to streaming, they basically put in their agreements that a lot of that marketing should be happening from the DSPs. That was one of the ways to negotiate these deals. So I would say that record labels eventually kind of stopped marketing music in the traditional way. And the responsibility ended up on the streaming services to do it. At the same time, you could also see a dramatic shift when it comes to like what marketing is. The traditional media and stuff like that disappeared. And suddenly it becomes really about like finding ways, buying social media ads or ways to find attention about it. But the most efficient way has always been fans communicating this. So my hypothesis around this and the shift that's going to happen is more based on the fact that when artists, as we all know, is taking control of all their rights today, most of the biggest artists have already or will in the near future control their rights and license the content back to a record label. That means that the record labels are not going to have the kind of deal they used to have. So they are not going to spend the money on the marketing. So the way I see it is that on one side, the fans has become extremely engaged with their artists. It's almost like an extension of themselves. We see that in this kind of world, I would say like it's more like a friendship and community. So the fan base has started to become more like a friendship thing. We can see it on the Taylors, on the BTS, and a lot of others that have been successful in building that relationship. These fans are now like asking for way, way more. I mean, if you had a photo of a celebrity 20 years ago, it was a big thing. Today, like a 12-year-old girl expects to get a selfie on Taylor. So they're kind of in a situation where they hire you, but they fire you. So they are extremely important today. So I think we are at the point right now where we need to start thinking about the reward mechanism. And my theory around it is the same thing. Social media is really about attention. And we all know about like influencers that get paid to promote different things. We also know that there are smaller influencers in groups that do the same thing. I think we just need to find a way. And what I believe is going to happen is that, and I write this in the book as well, is I think in the future, like a big artist will go out and say like, hey, I will give 20% back to my fans. I don't talking about like fiat currency. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like they're going to offset the piece of their revenues to reward the fans. And what I mean with that is that in some different ways, the fans, what are they looking for? They're not looking for money. They're looking for experience. They're looking for the chance of actually get the ticket to buy that merch. And I think there's millions of ways of doing this in a very smart way where fans get access, and you don't have to tell what fans do. Fans going to do it. But if they do these tasks, like if they do the thing they do today, there needs to be some reward. That's what I see happening, and it's small things coming, but the reward mechanism between fans and artists is going to be critical moving forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And, on that note, Nick, I want to go back to explore something that you spoke of briefly. You just touched on it in an earlier answer. You discuss how data-driven innovation is empowering fans as, gatekeepers of tomorrow's biggest hits. I'm curious, can you elaborate on how platforms like Spotify and Apple and others are using data, not just to recommend music, but to genuinely empower fan communities and influence trends and artist successes?
Yeah, I can speak about the things, at the time, probably we all know that technology has advanced, but what we created, back in the days was really a system to really find out, how do we get signals from users, if they like something and what are the different signals and how do we value them? What we find out first was that just the fact that if people skip a song, it's one sort of signal. The strongest signal we had was that people heard the song, that was in different ways, programmed in front of them, adding on the playlist, personal recommendation, and they listened to it, they saved it, and they replayed it. That was a really, really strong incentive. What happens after a while is that we realized that the more I would say curated experience people have, and a lot of people want to have curated experience, it became more like a lean back experience. So one of the problems we had was that a lot of people just open up the app, look what's there, press play, and then do something else. So we don't really get that input. We just see a lot of play streams. But what we really started to do when it comes to Superfans and understand how that works is that we started to find these, when we saw a song kind of taking off, from nowhere, which we tracked back and saw who are these people that found these songs early and added them and played them before everyone else. And then we started to build cohorts around that to try to understand if we saw early signals of potential songs that take off. And if we saw these signals, we could start position them towards people that had that taste and see if the uptake happened. And that was the most interesting thing where you can take, a certain cohort, a certain category of users that are leaning, that really loves music and love that genre or are interested in new music and see how they reacted on it, because they are usually the early adopters on these things. And that helped us, to scale these and help artists to find new audiences.
No, I couldn't agree more. You've seen firsthand how technology can disrupt industries. And I'm curious, how do you evaluate when a technological shift is genuinely groundbreaking versus when it's a fleeting trend, particularly in the world of music?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that, I think every disruption of the industry always comes with a big technological shift, and it's always interesting when I'm thinking back, and if we go back to the middle of 2000, I don't know how many people that really knows this, but Sweden was, I was in the music industry at that time, writing, producing was very interesting of technology and stuff like that. And we started to see, especially in the Nordic countries, that music kind of, buying music and the industry kind of collapsing. And that was the first. And the reason for that was that Sweden has like a very early high broadband penetration, which also drove, a lot of technology and innovations. But the problem with the backside of it is that it also opens up for a lot of piracy. So we saw that the Pirate Bay and a couple of other companies basically took over the music industry in the Nordic countries, especially in Sweden. And the fascinating thing is that at the same time, we could see that a lot of old Swedish people with a good engineering background and good understanding of the music industry and always been very successful in that, started to look at that. And I was one of them, and Daniel at Spotify was one of them, Daniel and Martin, and there was SoundCloud, and there was a bunch of companies at the same time in the middle of 2000 that started to address that thing. And here you can see what I think is interesting, that sometimes technology, when it happens, has the ability, because Napster was built on the same kind of thing. It's a peer-to-peer system. It's usually something else that drives it, and technology opens it up for it. But it was first when actually the consumer-friendly user interface got introduced that people said like, yes, this is way better. And if we wouldn't have had piracy in Sweden, Spotify would never have gotten like their test licensing for the Nordic countries to see if streaming was a way for the future. And when that turned out to be extremely successful, country by country, and eventually US also opened up for it. So I don't think there would have been this change if it wouldn't have been, like that the industry in certain areas was totally collapsing. So what I see right now when it comes to technology, I think the biggest challenge is a little bit like, we started by saying like, how do you cut through the noise? So I think it's one thing like, is there ways to market music and find new ways to reach fans? And the other things that I think, we're building too many platforms today that starting to focus on the artist. And I would say like, the problem with most of these platforms is that they're based on the same thing. They want to set up X amount of services. They want the artists to come there and drive the fans to the platform, which we know don't work. So I think the interesting thing is like, how can we build, platforms that really focus on the fans, so the artists want to come over there because the fans are there. That is, what I think is the next, movement that needs to happen. I don't believe in the other ways. Otherwise, it's going to stay very much as this right now.
So you're seeing that a place where there's a platform where the fans are already congregating and the artists go there.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like this is how social media works. Right. The social media model is really based on some kind of rewards. Thumbs up, comments, whatever it is. But it also has a lot of problems, and I don't think that rewards are valued in the same way as it was from the beginning. So what is that new kind of community / place where fans are the driver, because they are the driver of the industry. So it feels a little bit, think about it like this. Instead of going through a big company that is a social media platform or is like a streaming service or whatever it is, like, and you as an artist, you want to reach the fans. But we also know that these platforms, they are not really making the money out of all their cut of the copyright, because I don't want to go into that discussion right now, but everybody knows that 70% of the money that Spotify and others bring in is being paid out to the rights holders. So the 30% is not going to be enough for the Spotifys of the world to run their big businesses. So what they have is all the data, and they have all the ability to help you with that marketing and charge you for it. I just think we need to find ways how the fans and the artists can meet in a place that is not, based on, margins and earnings for the platforms that run them. And there is where I feel there's an opportunity. And I think I've seen a couple of interesting starting points on it, but I think we just need to give way, way more power to the fans that they have earned, and give them the tools and the platform they're looking for.
Yeah, that's the great challenge, because so many artists today have control of their own music. I'm talking, new artists. And that's, I think one of the interesting things when you speak about platforms is, when you look at platforms like Spotify or Instagram or Facebook or any of those, what you have is you have what you talk about, which is the conglomeration of communities. You have the fans based there. But what you're eventually trying to do is, all of those platforms not Spotify, but you use those platforms to drive people to Spotify to get their attention. And then you have the problem that you talk about, which is the, 70% goes to the rights holders. You recall early in the early days when I guess it was maybe not streaming, but it was in the download era, when individual labels tried this business, when they didn't want to farm it out to people, you had things like press play, and they didn't work because the majority, only that label's music, was available on that particular platform. You cannot send the fan to 5 or 6 different places to get what it is that they're interested in. So this becomes a really interesting point that you're talking about, because if the model that you've articulated doesn't work for the reasons that you've said it doesn't work, what is the platform? I mean, I'm thinking like, the strategies that you've seen that artists use to successfully navigate and thrive in this environment, a lot of them are social media, but they're going back to the same traditional things to drive them to Spotify, to drive them to Apple, to drive them to Deezer, to drive them to these same platforms that have put the time, energy, and money into those communities and built the systems for us to actually hear all of the music. So this seems to be the great catch-22, and I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I don't believe you should in any way kind of split up music and expect consumers to consume on different places. That's never going to work. That's
You're right. Yes, it never has.
Yeah. But we have to go back and you have to ask, the right question. I think that the problem is that no one asks the right question. The right question for me is like, what is fans asking for? If you think about a fan today, the biggest problem they have, they're always like the word, like the glory word in the music industry, and right now it's like always connected to revenue. So it's been the hot word has been like superfans. And I think if we start there, I'm gonna give you a couple of analogies around this, which I don't agree with that. There's nothing that says that a super fan to an artist is equal to dollars. It doesn't mean that super fans have more money than everyone else. I think we are in a system where there's something broken in the system. And what I mean with that is that we all know, like, if we have kids that want to go on a Taylor Swift concert or whatever concert it is out there, we know as parents that we got to do whatever it takes to get these tickets. The problem with the system today is it's not rewarding the true fans. So we have scalping, we have secondaries. It's almost impossible to verify fans and so on and so on. So it ends up buying these crazy ticket prices that is not in any way going to the artist. This is scalpers, it's secondary, it's StubHubs, it's whatever it is that makes that money. So what I mean when I'm saying that, we need to go back and build like a fans-friendly platform is that we need to start verifying fans on the fans' condition. So if I'm a fan, I want to be able, and the artists also want to be able to making sure that they are super fans and the people that really do their kind of guerrilla marketing actually can get these tickets, So they're looking for a verification system. The other thing is like, there needs to be a way, if I'm spending all these times and, promoting my favorite artists and do everything like that, how is that being, rewarded? So when I'm talking about this is that I think you need to start and ask yourself, like, what do fans want? What are they looking for? They own all their data. Right now, they kind of give it away to the social media platforms for them to make money on advertising for them. Similar way is in the industry is that they cannot really impact anything on the streaming platforms. So I might be hoping for something here, but when I see all the structures happening is that I'm pretty sure that artists will have no problems to reward their fans as long as it was a system that kind of like I put in, if I take 20% of my revenues and convert that into tickets to merch, whatever they're looking for, the value for the fans will be 5 times that value. The second thing is like, how do we track that? How do we do that? But the moment is that the artist is looking for ways to reach the fans or to voice the fans. But the existing systems that are out there, and I'm thinking about the constituents like the fans and the artists and the dynamic, we don't have a platform that actually has the feature and the functions that both the artist is looking for and the fans looking for. So I'm pretty sure that could be totally disconnected, because the fact of music, for me, it's like I'm pretty sure in the future that we will not listen to music in the same way as we do today. We're going to get smarter. Music in some ways is just going to be everywhere, and we always see that compared to just 10 years, how we built into every device, we can imagine it starts playing wherever we go. That's the world. So I don't think the interface by itself will be that important. I think it's more about okay, how do I reach my fans? How do I find the music? And the symbiotic relationship between fans and artists needs to be sorted. It's not there today. And that's what the platform, I believe, can change the dynamics, needs to deliver on.
Yeah, maybe
Does that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. And maybe that's, the future. When somebody can figure that out, it will be the next revolutionary step. Who knows? Maybe that's one of the things that AI or whatever will figure out.
Yeah, it's an interesting segue to get into the next question for you. How do you envision the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning evolving within music production, distribution, and even live events? Are there any specific innovations you're most excited about?
Yeah, my view is, and I want to be careful because we also know that a lot of things going to happen in AI but if we look at it, what it is right now and where we think it's heading, for me, I think this is superpowers, it makes everyone almost like a superhero with a lot of different resources that we didn't have. So we can be more efficient in certain ways. I'm not 100% convinced because I truly believe that there is an emotion connection between fans and artists that is way, way more than just a song. I think it's the personality. I think it's the storytelling, is the authenticity around the artist and stuff like that. So I'm not sure I'm buying into that. But I do believe that there's a way how these tools can help improve. But I still have high hopes that music for me is so dimensional in our senses. There's so many different ways. We all remember, in the early days before music videos came, that it was a huge difference to just hear a song and then just turn on MTV and see the song. And that changed the perception of the song. I think it's the same thing today. I think that relationship is important. The second thing when it comes to AI, what I think is going to be incredible is that I think we're going to start understand that there are certain content that feels more personalized, that feels for you, that we all know it's done by AI. What I mean with that is that I can totally see that artists today need to scale. They probably need to create a twin avatar of themselves. They probably need to talk different to different fans depending on their personality. I think we're going to see a way how, millions of fans getting personal video message to them, which is the artist in the artist initiatives, but is not really the artist that has recorded 1 million versions. But I think we're going to accept it. I think we're already accepting a lot of these things that is technologically happening because of these technologies. So I believe that this is incredible tools for the small team artists, to be able to do things that, you need a lot of money to do. I think it's also another thing where we can create way, way more personal relationships because we can scale it, we can find ways. So I'm extremely optimistic. I'm not sure that we will see a lot of AI-produced songs or 100% AI artists taking over the charge. I simply don't believe in that yet. But I could change my mind in a few years, who knows? But as it is right now, I don't believe in that.
Hey, Insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured conversation. Stay tuned because we've got so much value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Eric, as an artist, what do you find are the most challenging aspects to a music career, especially when you're starting out?
Well, I think one of the first things is just trying to get the direction of who you are as an artist, where you want to go, where you want to be. And, we've talked about it on the show a lot. Who is your target audience? Who you are? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What do you think would resonate with an audience? And so those are some of the things that I would feel being a new artist. Obviously, what I know now is different because I know these things, but for people that are out there like our audience that don't have necessarily any direction to go would be the first things that I would start off with.
And having the songs that
Absolutely.
incorporate those elements that you're speaking of into it. That's so important today.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why we started MUBUTV and why we started this new consulting service that we're offering to all of our insiders out there, because that is another one of the big things. I mean, that is the big thing, is like having the great songs. That's what it really starts off. Our friend Don Grierson always said, it always starts with a great song. So that's probably, besides putting together what your audience and what your target audience is the single most important thing. Where are your songs at currently today? Are you collaborating with people? Are you trying to go out to networking events where you can connect with other songwriters and stuff like that? So
yeah, and what are your strengths?
Exactly.
Are you a strong lyric writer? Are you a strong melody writer? Are you a strong musician, a player?
Right.
And it's really important to get really strong clarity on those issues before proceeding.
I totally agree, Rich. And, with our consulting services, we offer a myriad of different packages and we've made it super affordable for everybody. So, if you guys are interested out there in connecting with us on a coaching call, you can visit book.mubutv.com and start off with a free 15-minute discovery call.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We start with an initial 15-minute call where we can get a sense of who you are, what are the issues that you specifically have, right, and want to work on.
Exactly.
And we can go from there. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we tailor everything to your needs. It's not like a cookie cutter thing. We kind of really want to get to know who you are as an artist, where you at today, what's the snapshot of you as an artist today, and then start trying to craft something that's tailor-made for you. So again, if you're interested, visit us at book.mubutv.com for your 15-minute discovery call.
I want to ask, you just sort of stimulated a thought here based on, what I know about your background, which is that, you had a company, TSX Entertainment, and it was a company that was at the intersection of entertainment, technology, and real-world fan experiences. And Nick, my question is, today, where artists must cultivate direct relationships, as we've been talking about with their audience, how important do you believe the integration of physical and digital experience is for music artists and fans today?
I think it's the absolute most important thing. The hypothesis around TSX was a little bit like, I realized in the Spotify days, when it comes to artists, it's always, and we started this interview with the same thing, like, how do you cut through the noise? How do you engage fans? How do you amplify these, new release? Like, how do I even, get the message out there? There is something I learned over the years. There's only two ways you can be in the entertainment industry, and that's not just music, it's everything. Either you have assets that people want to have, or you write checks. There's no other ways. People never going to convince me about something else. So the TSX strategy, when I got invited to that, was that I know that a lot of people believe that artists is driven by money. And I think there might be some artists that are there, but most of the artists is driven by completely different other things. It's really about the storytelling. It's about the creation. It's about, playing for fans. And also another thing is that they want to kind of get their big image splash and the story out there. And they also want to be able to enable, fans to amplify it. So TSX was really built on the hypothesis where we say, like, okay, what really drives these things? Artists want to perform at places that creates a lot of noise and attention. Another thing we say, like, if these things can be almost secret, like surprise performances, we also know that people gonna react in a different way. There's the mystique around it. And we see that around secret releases and built anticipation. It's almost like you're trying to have like an Easter egg somewhere. So what we did and what we proved was a little bit like, if you can have a big artist and you can convince them, like, imagine to come out on the stage at Times Square and it's tens of thousands of people there, no one knows what's going on, and the story and the amplification of that would be massive. A lot of people said from the beginning, like, how is that going to work? Why would artists be interesting? There's no ticketing, they can't get paid and stuff like that. I say, like, this the difference. Like artists looking for these moments, and they're looking for moments where they can enhance the storytelling. So what we proved with these things was that when we did the first one, which is always the most difficult one, but I had a good relationship with Post and the team, and they agreed to it, and we did it, and it took off, and it filled out Times Square, and the result was enormous. But the biggest thing was that you used humans in tens of thousands of people. You surprised them with something that they couldn't even believe that they experienced. So the way you tell the story is completely different than going to a concert. And we saw that amplification happens. And when we did like John Cook with BTS, we were actually on numbers where earned media was in like the 50 millions, and the online reach was on the billions, So we realized that if you can find these physical moments where you have the fans and artists come together, and there's a twist to it, the effect in the digital world of the amplification is the absolute most rewarding you can do. And when we proved that concept, it was very easy to get sponsors to come in and pay for it, and the anticipation around these shows just escalated. And it was an interesting test to do, but it proved that the physical kind of connections between artists and fans is still the strongest driver for digital.
With the continued rise of streaming, the economics of music have shifted dramatically. Can you see a future where artists gain more control over distribution and compensation, or will the large platforms continue to shape the industry's financial landscape?
It's a good question. I think, like I'm partly speaking, on my own history here, but I think there was a lot of battles in the beginning on like who will be the streaming platforms that wins, like we have a bunch of them. We have a bunch of them, but it's clearly a big winner that is the one who drives the conversation and the narrative and impacts charts and stuff mostly, and that is by far Spotify. That's proved this enormous successful thing of building a platform in the same way as YouTube took like videos to that place. I think that's very, very difficult to change. And what I mean with that is changing consumers' behaviors just for the sake of it. I think that's a difference from when I said before, like, how can you move fans to a platform? I think it all comes back to like the why, like on a fans platform, if there's actually rewards and upside for the fans to be there, and it's not about changing the consumption of the music, I think you can move them there. If it's about changing the consumption of the music, I think it's very, very difficult. And I think we are in a situation right now where I also think that the labels don't have the power they used to have to play against Spotify, because now the artist is starting on their content. We have seen examples when Lucian kind of pulled all the content from TikTok, and Taylor said, like, I don't care what you do, I want to be there. And suddenly, like, he had to find a deal immediately and get everyone back. So I think the artists are in control of it today. And I think that the labels has become way, way more of asset owners and banks. Like, I think they have a completely different role today. So in the dynamics of that, I'm not really sure, but I think the power of both the artists and the fans has increased, and will keep increasing. So I think everything comes down to that symbiotic relationship. And however that turns out, that is what's going to, drive the change.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I want to ask you on that note, Nick, as someone who's worked with both tech companies and artists, what do you feel is the most important consciousness shift that artists need to make today in order to build more sustainable and fan-centered music careers?
I think, I get this question a lot, from people like, what is, like, you've been on the big platform, about this industry, like, what do you recommend? And established artists and emerging artists, whatever it is, like to do. And it keeps coming back to the same thing, when it comes to these, just what is important. I think the Spotifys of today, I would say, like, all the distribution companies that distributes content today are mostly tech companies. It's about the innovation in the tech space and try to create better experience for the user. I don't think it's depends on who you ask. Like, if you're Netflix, you produce other content. So of course, like, they make decision around the content. But Spotify, who doesn't produce it, is really about the user experience and the technology and trying to make it easier, better, and all the time. So I would say like the advantage for artists today, and this goes back to the old days, is almost when I was young. I'm 58, so I grew up when fan clubs was the way where you send stuff and get it through mail. I see it, we are very, very close to a similar thing. I want to say one thing that I think is the biggest shift we see happening right now. We know that there is a huge problem with screen time with kids and the loneliness. And I read an article in the New York Times, which I think is really on point when it comes to what have happened in the music industry. I think these kind of fan bases has replaced, friendship and communities today. I think they are stronger. And what I want to say with that is that if you look at artists that are able to sell tickets to tours versus the artists who are not able to sell tickets to the tours, is a very clear, separation between them. The artists that can sell tickets today are the ones who have been able to create, a relationship with your fans. And the fans feels like they belong to something. They are part of something. And when they meet, they think about the concert tickets before, they hang out in community, they communicate it, they meet, they exchange stuff. It's like a friend thing. And then it's kind of afterwards they follow up with that. And that has become basically the friendship of today. If an artist hasn't built that relationship with their fans, which you have seen on a lot of artists failing on selling tickets, and if you really look into it, you realize there's no relationship there. The fan base itself, it's not a community with the values and understand that. And I remember Chris Martin said a good thing about like, what do you think the reason is that you're selling so much ticket? And he said something that's very true. And he said like, I think we just a good reason for people to get together. And I couldn't agree more. I think that is a super important thing that just reflects the loneliness and the world we're living in. So the artists that can create these communities, that can put up values and get fans to be part of it, they're going to be successful. The people that are not enabled to be authentic around it, that believe that release. I don't want to go into artist names, but this very clear. There's some artists that made release a record for 10 years ago when the industry looked very different, when it was a promotional marketing one-way communication. And then they go on tour 10 years later and they kind of pick up a similar album that they did 10 years ago. And no one understands what's going on and no one buys a ticket. So communities and the relationship with your fans, and I would say like the relationship between fans is the absolute most important thing today to be successful as an artist.
I could not agree with you more, Nick. This is something I teach courses on the music business at Musicians Institute. And one of the things, it was so fascinating listening to you just now, because one of the things that I'm always telling my students is that in the era that we are in today, where music is free, that's only a portion of the equation. What becomes the, and musically speaking, we all get whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want, on any number of devices we want, on any number of platforms, wherever we are in the world, and we get it for free. So that's the given. And I think one of the most important things you said is that it's the unspoken. It's who are you? What are you about? Where are you coming from? What are your values? Why should I care? What do you stand for? What don't you stand for? Those things, and you articulated that so well in talking about that connection. And I believe, to be perfectly frank about it, a lot of this is unconscious in the mind of the fan, but very, very real at the same time. And it is, what binds people. And if Chris Martin were here right now, I would say the same thing to him, that, who they are and what they're about and where they're coming from and what they stand for and the values that they have matter just as much as, the latest hit song that they may or may not even have. I mean, you look at artists like you mentioned who don't have massive hit singles, but you cannot get a ticket to their show. You cannot, and yet people that have 200, 300, 400 million streams on a Spotify platform or an Apple, and they can't sell 50 tickets.
No,
and that's
yeah.
No,
that's
go ahead.
Totally the reality. Yeah, that's totally reality. Like, there's no equation that says like, this is my streams, this is my ticket sales. Ticket sales is about something else, and we all know that. Like, It's about the values. It's what Coldplay is as a band. Even small things, like they have always shared, revenues equally between the members. All these small things matters way, way more than people think. It's about because the moment you kind of expand, your own personality to say I love that artist, that band, whatever it is, that's an extension of me. You become extremely responsible for taking care of that relationship. And if you do something that doesn't feel right for the band or something like that, they're going to leave you. And you also know that it's going to probably, if you do something really bad, it could kill your career. So there's only one way not to fake that, is that you have to be authentic. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be about storytelling. You have to take your fans through the goods and the bads, because they see you as a friend. They see you as part of their community, and you need to deliver that. So I think it comes down to that artists today, we all remember, in the old days, we always believed that Michael Jackson came from another planet because we never saw him. Today, fans get invited so close to people. They are basically next to them all the time in a way. And we have social media, and we have all these medias covering all that thing all the time. So you're going to be exposed if you're trying to be something you're not. But if you're truly something and you can communicate that, that fans is going to start building around you. And if you like you and you like your personality and what you stand for and stuff like that, and I totally believe, like I said in the beginning, if you can get 100 fans, you can get 1,000 fans, and so on and so on. It's just about getting these first fans. And to your point, I had conversations with artists that I think is fascinating that started from nowhere, and the first thing they do is that they do backyard concerts with their fans, and they ask the fans to invite people and host this concert. They make them a part of their band from the beginning, which they are. And, you can't buy that loyalty. That is something that cuts through everything. And I think it's a very basic thing we're talking about here, but you can't fake it anymore. That's why I'm saying, if you really are talented, if you believe in meritocracy, if you're in it for the marathon, not the sprint, there's a fairly good chance that you're going to succeed in some way if you not give up, even if the competition is as it is right now.
Nick, throughout your life, have there been any books or films that have really inspired you, professionally speaking, that you can share with our audience?
Oh, that's an interesting thing. I think every people love, the story about the underdog, the one that was not cut, in the perfect way, that conquer all these problems and became successful. I think we've seen these movies. And for me, I love what I think have happened there. This is going to sound a little bit crazy and maybe a little bit on the other side, but I also believe that a lot of these, not maybe today, but all these talented shows that popped up, the Idols, the X Factor, the way, was also a really good way for people to understand the story behind something before or through that journey. So I would say, without going into a book and stuff like that, I think I'm always serving, what's going around in the community, and I see someone breaking through. And if I'm looking at a majority of successful people when it comes to, especially in the music industry, it's really, really true stories where you can understand why they wrote that song, why they're on that stage, how that happens. I think that is the context that makes us, lean in a different ways and take it to our heart. And if that artist keeps delivering on these different things, I think that is the story. The problem on the opposite side is that you have too many people in the music industry that believes it's a right to be living out of music, that complains around these different things just because you have been able to produce music and upload it to a streaming platform. It doesn't mean that you have the right to make your earning from music. And I think these two things is seen in our community in all ways. But it's going to shine through if you have the talent or not. But I'm always fascinated that so many people believe they have the talent, but I think obviously a lot of people can see that they don't have it and they're probably never going to succeed, or they never going to succeed, versus the ones that take that opportunity and whatever it is. It's not about singing in the perfect pitch. It's not about like the techniques you're using. It's about your expression and how you move people.
Yeah, I have encountered that same kind of consciousness within the business. And what's interesting is that a lot of it initially, Nick, and I'm sure this must have been your experience as well, came from people who were from the old model. They were from the model of, we didn't put out as many records, and the ones that we did put out, we got paid for. We made money on it. And this new model, you always hear, well, the new model, and you hear this from artists today, well, the new model, I can't make money on payments from Spotify, or I can't make money. And the truth is, if you look at it from an industry point of view, just as an industry as a whole, more money is being made on royalties in publishing and labels. The difference is, and nobody speaks about this, is that if it were going to metaphorically 1,000 people in the old model, it's now going to 500,000 people. And that's the big difference today, is that it's going to many, many more people, and more people are being exposed to more music, building careers. It's not just, you got, back in that old model, you got signed because someone, an A&R person, an executive, whoever, deemed you were worthy of that deal. And in that model, only 10 to 15% of those people ever had any kind of breakthrough success. That was it. Yeah. And the ABBAs and the Rolling Stones and, the Sade's and the Bon Jovis, they supported the whole business, but we don't live in that world anymore. So it's interesting to hear you speak about that consciousness. I want to ask you something. As an entrepreneur yourself with multiple ventures, you've shown that it's possible to bridge various industries. And I'm curious, what advice do you have for music artists looking to expand beyond their influence, outside of just music, into areas like technology or hospitality?
Yeah, I think a very interesting trend is when I'm start thinking about what do people want to do? Why are people working from 9 to 5? Save up money. And I think we all experienced during COVID that it's not about being in front of a screen. It's more compelling than ever to experience things, in real life. And I think this is going to be the reaction towards technology. And I just think that part's going to go stronger. The TSX, and I'm involved in a couple of other projects. When you think about an artist today and you think about what it stands for and the brand and everything like that, going back a little bit to your point around there's more money in the industry than ever. But it's also another thing that is also spills over to a lot of different things. We all know that these artists today, if it's the Rihannas, if it's Selena Gomez, Taylor, they making so much money out of other things than actually their music experience. They launch products, they open things. People can't get enough of their brands in some way because it stands for something that they feel very safe with. So I think, when it comes to any artist today, I think you just need to take a 30,000 feet view of thinking about what is your passion. I totally believe if you're an artist in your hometown, wherever you stay, and you see that happen in Nashville a lot, everyone open their honky-tonk bars or restaurants and stuff like that, because it's just an extension of their brand, and the fans want to relive it through all the different verticals that exist. So I do believe that I don't see any difference. We talked about it in TSX a lot of times, okay, when we finally, got the building up and running, in a restaurant, what is the biggest challenge with restaurants? Yeah, it could be the fact that its brand is very difficult to be on top. It's low margins. So why don't you have a restaurant as an extension of whatever an artist want to do? So I think we got to see way more of that moving forward, where artists started to expand, their brand into more of these experience-driven things. And what I mean with that, you're going to see more artists being actors. You're going to see more artists getting into hospitality in different ways. For me, it's obvious because the power they have and the strength in their brands is, as long as they stand true to their values, they can expend as much as they want. And we're going to see that happening for sure.
I wanted to ask you, Nick, how can people reach you who want to, touch base and contact you about what you do? What would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm mostly active on Instagram, and there's also a way to reach me on my webpage where you can see a lot of other things around it. And so nickholmsten.com, or my handle on Instagram is nickmanic, Nickmanic. And I love having conversations. I mean, like a lot of the things when I decided to write this book was really to share a lot of the experience that I have had and try to put, my beliefs and my learnings into context to real things that have happened. And to your point before, I just want to address that before I forget it, is that when we talk about the value of music today, I remember I had this conversation with Monty Lippmann at Republic, and I said to him in the early days, the thing about when people talk about that the money in music is less today, it couldn't be more wrong, because we don't know yet. We haven't done that Excel sheet where we're looking at a lifetime of a song is kind of endless today compared to the retail world. So I gave an example, if you take Starboy, that I remember when that happens and we were working with Weekend and the management, and Weekend was about to break through, but was not like a superstar yet. That was released 2016. When I wrote this book in February 20, I think that chapter was in somewhere in February 2024, it was still a top 50 song on Spotify and had passed 4 billion streams. When you do the equation of what Starboy is going to generate after 30 years, I'm going to tell you that number is going to be 10 times the old industry. So when people say you're making less money, people don't know. They haven't done their work. It's not a six months race anymore. It's a 30-year collecting revenue race. And in 15 years from now, we're going to start seeing some crazy numbers of what these massive songs have generated. And they're just going to keep generating until they become public domains.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And also, we don't know what's coming as far as new and innovative kinds of outlets for music. We can only imagine the outlets we have now, which is, streaming and what have you. But I'm convinced that there are many new innovations and technologies for music and for the exposure of music that we haven't even thought of yet because they haven't been invented yet.
Right. Especially with AI coming too. We're in 1.0 right now of AI. Right. So imagine 2.0, 3.0, how that's going to go.
Absolutely. And when we look, and I'm sure you see this all the time, Nick, in your world, when you look at what, like Eric said, the 1.0, when you look at the level of sophistication 1.0 is at, one can only, project and think, my God, what is 3 or 4.0 of this, whatever it is, ChatGPT, whatever it is, going to look like. That's the part that's so exciting and so, profound in its impact. So, Nick, we want to thank you so much for taking the time. This has been an enlightening, informative, wonderful conversation that we are very, very grateful for you taking the time to speak with us on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich and Eric. It's been a pleasure. Anytime.
Unbelievable. Wow, Eric. I mean, this is someone who, we always talk about this, but this is someone who has been on the front lines of the music industry for the last several years, was involved in the revolutionary shift from the copy model to the access model of streaming, and who really, really gets the essential cultural and psychological changes that have happened in the world of fandom with regards to music and its power within the industry. Again, I think probably for me, one of the most important things that he talked about, which I think a lot of artists need to understand today is, he mentions the decreasing gatekeeping by labels due to fans becoming the de facto A&R, with fans making the decisions and not record labels. Yeah. That is very true. Still people believe if I'm signed to a major label, somehow they will give me a career. It doesn't work that way. And one of the reasons is because power, money, market share do not get what they used to. We don't live in that world anymore where very, very few gatekeepers get to say who gets a career and who doesn't. And by the way, we don't have that in movies. We don't have that in books. We don't have that in television. We certainly don't have that in music. And that's a great shift. It's the old expression of the good news for artists, there are no more gatekeepers.
Right.
The bad news for artists,
there
are
no
no
more
more gates. That's
Exactly.
right. They've all been plowed down. So
right.
what that means is that in that scenario, the most valuable commodity in the world is not the money or the power or the market share or the size of your company. It's the ability to get people's attention. Why? Because that's the one quality in all of the mediums I've talked about that you can't buy anymore.
That means we're all on the same level playing field. Whether you're Beyonce or the person that's in, Podunk, Idaho, they're all the same, which is, to me, it's super exciting. To me, that's the exciting part of what we're doing. The challenge is how do you get there?
Yes.
How can you be the next Lil Nas X that, again, it started that he had a great song. I think the big misnomer that a lot of people, and everybody has to realize this in their show, is that you've got to have great songs. And when I mean great, you're competing with material. Beyonce and everybody. You fill in the blank of your favorite artist, you are competing against that person or that group. And if that music is not at that level, you probably shouldn't be starting out until you get that to where it's at a really broadcast quality, great hook, great verses, and an amazing chorus. If you're not at that point, you might want to hold off on start or get going, but it's really tough in this competitive market to not have a really incredible sounding strong song. So that's, I guess, the big misnomer. And that's where we get into that influx of where there's so many artists out there that now it's like a faucet that everybody thinks they're an artist now because we can create music in our computer. But the difference is, can you really make a great song? And that's the difference. That's the really key difference. One of the things that really drew me in this conversation was what we kind of talked on the top of the show. I think you may have talked about it, and I'm bringing it up again because it's such an important part. The personal storytelling and vulnerability as crucial for artists to forge deeper connections with fans and allowing that authentic fan relationship to drive success. I know we've talked a lot about it on the show, Rich, where we talk about an artist like Billie Eilish, which, she launched with something like 14 singles before the first record came out through like a 2 or 3 year period.
3.5 years.
Yeah,
yes,
but
correct.
Building that story, building who she was slowly with the audience and slowly opening up the doors to her kingdom and how that built and built and built and built. And again, getting back to there were great song after great song after great song. And it's something that it's so crucial to everybody who is listening to this right now. I just can't stress that enough, how important it is to tell your personal story, your personal narrative. And you can easily do that now. It's just a matter of just taking the time, maybe taking a weekend for yourself and really just sitting down and writing everything about you, what you believe in, all the different areas and how you can craft that. And another thing that I always tell people, especially people that we consult, is to look at the top 10 artists that are in your wheelhouse. Look at the top 10 artists, whether they're bands or solo artists or a combination of thereof, and start analyzing what it is that they're doing. Look at how their story is being told, and you will find a lot of keys to the kingdom just right there. Just in doing that one exercise, take a weekend for yourself to just go and start studying and start following all their posts. And that's how you're going to formulate your own strategy and come up with your own way of telling your story.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Eric. And I think, the important thing to add to what you're saying to our audience, to add value for them is, look at who the artists are out in the world, that you like, that are okay. And then look at the artists that you would spend $50, $100 to go see. Okay.
Right.
And that's going to be a very individual thing to each person listening to this. And ask yourself to those people, what is it about that artist that I'm willing to spend $100? Why do I want to do that? I mean, really, like what you were saying, dive deep into that. What is it about them? And I guarantee you, it's not just about the songs.
Right.
There's something else that's saying, I need to be at that show. I need to spend that money.
Right.
The song is, like you're saying, that's the important part for the bass. But the other part of it in this era is that aspect. That's very, very important, that they both have to be together.
Hey, Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.